Water. That inorganic, tasteless, odourless, colourless chemical compound which makes up 60% of the human body and is essential for life. Don't you just love the stuff? The other day I was talking to a friend and she told me that she was halfway through one entire month of drinking just water as a means of losing weight. It surprised me to find out that the average person on an average day drinks 400 calories in drinks alone. With water obviously being a calorie-less, if calorie-less is a word, substance, it makes a great way of losing weight easily. Aside from losing weight, she reported other benefits such as improved digestion, better skin, and an increased sense of overall mental and physical well-being. But there were two benefits in particular that really interested me, with the first being that she had a more stable energy source throughout the day in that she was able to work and concentrate on things in a more consistent fashion without having those usual peaks and troughs that we usually experience throughout the day. The second being was that she had better sleep. Not only was she able to sleep better for longer, she also was able to fall asleep quicker than she had done previously. I was interested in these two areas because I struggle with them myself. I usually start each day with high energy, going for my run in the morning, having a cold shower and then working solidly up until midday, at which point my motivation and energy suddenly drops. Also, I have terrible insomnia. Sometimes it takes me up to an hour and a half to fall asleep and I usually wake up sometimes in the middle of the night. In previous attempts to fix these problems, I've tried changing my diet and experimenting with different focus tools to fix my concentration issues, and I've also tried regulating my sleep patterns and turning off my screens before I go to bed. However, none of these fixes have had long-lasting impacts and I still suffer with concentration and sleep problems to this day. The famous saying, "You are what you eat," refers to how you will only be able to function as good as the food and drink that you put into your body. After having spoken to my friend the other day who had experienced great benefits from drinking only water, it made me think about my own drinking habits. Straight away, we can discount alcohol. I'm someone who doesn't drink a single drop of alcohol regardless of the social occasion or the day of the week. Why? About 6 months ago, I read the brilliant book by William Porter, Alcohol Explained, which breaks down in detail exactly what happens to the human body when you drink alcohol, and it left me not wanting to drink a single drop ever again. But that is a topic for another time and I will make a video on it one day. When I think about my other drinking habits, I think I may have found the culprit. I'm someone who is a massive caffeine fiend. I drink up to 6 cups of coffee and 4 cups of tea every single day. To find out if the caffeine is behind my concentration and sleep problems, I'm going to try drinking only water for an entire week. Currently it's midday on Sunday and I've only been drinking water for the entire day, and whilst I can't say I've experienced any major benefits so far, I can say that I've experienced a temporary lapse in concentration, which is probably due to the caffeine withdrawal. However, I'm very interested to find out how the test plays out throughout the week. Will my focus and concentration stabilise, and will I experience better sleep? Let's find out. When was the last time you drank just water for a while? I can't remember the last time I drank just water for a day, let alone an entire week. Over the years, I've become accustomed to drinking other drinks like coffee, tea, fizzy drinks and juice, only opting for water in its pure form when severely dehydrated, like during a long run. So it's the second day of this test of only drinking water for a week, and I've just got back from my second morning run with water as the only fuel source. When I woke up this morning, something odd happened. I started making a coffee instinctually without even thinking about it. It took me about 30 seconds to realise that I had this test going on, and then I stopped making the coffee. But it made me think. Making and drinking coffee for me has become somewhat of a habit. I do it without even thinking about it, it's unconscious. Today I'm working at home. I wonder if there'll be any improvements or declines in my performance whilst drinking only water. Though I seem chilled, I can assure you that the second day was an absolute baptism of fire. I woke up with a pounding headache and couldn't seem to find the motivation to get up. I eventually pulled myself out of bed, went for my morning run, which felt a lot harder than usual, and then sat down to work, despite not being able to concentrate on anything. I realised that I was suffering caffeine withdrawal symptoms. When you think about it, it's actually mad how caffeine is an addictive, psychoactive substance that we consume totally carefree on a daily basis. I'd become too accustomed to drinking coffee instead of water, and the withdrawal symptoms from going cold turkey and drinking just water were tough. But then the third day rolled around and things started to look on the up. It is day 3 of this test of drinking only water for an entire week, and I've got to say yesterday was absolutely abysmal. Oh my word, I went through all of the emotions and the difficulties of having a caffeine withdrawal. However, today is completely different and I'm feeling very focused and my energy is relatively stable. I'm actually getting quality work done and I haven't had that usual dip in my productivity and performance because of drinking so much caffeine. I've got my trusty H2O with me here. I'm drinking a lot throughout the day and I have noticed already on day 3 a big improvement in my performance. I'm keen to see if I'll have the same benefits for my sleep and if my productivity and focus will get any better throughout the week. Happy water. It's day 4 and I want to touch upon sleep. Usually it takes me about an hour to 80 minutes to fall asleep. I usually wake up a few times in the night so I'm not refreshed in the morning, and also I'm only able to achieve about 6 hours and 45 minutes of sleep per night. However, since starting to drink only water, I've noticed big changes. It now takes me about 15 to 20 minutes to fall asleep. I don't get up as many times during the middle of the night, and I'm now able to manage about 7 hours and 30 minutes of sleep per night, so I wake up feeling refreshed and ready to go in the morning. This is a massive benefit and it's probably the most surprising one that I've noticed since only drinking water. I think that by only drinking water you reduce the risk massively of consuming substances like caffeine and sugar that could risk and compromise the quality of your sleep. This has been a big discovery for me and I'm now going to seriously start considering how much caffeine and sugar I'm drinking throughout the day and when, so I can hopefully improve the quality and quantity of my sleep for the long term. With my sleep starting to radically improve in such a short amount of time, I expected to make similar gains in my running, but things didn't turn out this way and I started to think it was due to the absence of my old friend caffeine.
It is day 5 and I'm halfway through my normal morning run. Whilst it's easier to get up thanks to the better sleep that I've been experiencing, I've got to say that the actual performance of my runs themselves has been declining throughout the week. Whilst it's easier to start the run, the actual performance on the run itself isn't as good as it usually is. And it got me thinking, there's been huge links between drinking caffeine and athletic performance. And it may well be that for the future, when I want to do a good athletic performance, it might be for a race or a training session, maybe that is when I will drink coffee before the workout itself. And then maybe for the other times, the chilled runs, like this run that I'm on now, it might be that I just drink water for the benefits that I'm discovering throughout the course of this test. Anyway, it's a lovely morning. I'm going to finish my run and continue drinking just water. See you soon.
So it's day 6 in this test of drinking just water and I'm here in my garage. It's been an interesting week and I've noticed some big changes. One of the biggest changes that I've noticed is that my energy levels seem to be spread out evenly across the day when I'm drinking just water compared to my energy levels being focused in short, sharp bursts which correspond to the times that I normally drink coffee in my normal caffeine drinking days. Another big thing that I've noticed is just a greater sense of awareness. Now, what do I mean by awareness? Don't worry, I'm not going to start getting all monk on you. I simply mean that I'm thinking more about the tasks that I'm taking on and I'm actually taking more time to think things through rather than just ploughing ahead without giving things much thought, which I normally do when I drink coffee as my main drink throughout the day. However, I have noticed that for the big projects or those moments where lots of energy is required, for example, when I'm speaking in a meeting or when I need to get my head down and revise on a lot of work for upcoming exams, I've noticed that my energy has slumped a little and I'm not making the impression in terms of energy and impact that I usually make on other people. It just feels like there's a spark missing. Who knows, we've got one more day left of this test and I will then debrief you on what I've learned and provide you with some of the insights.
It's Saturday morning and I'm currently on a run with my brother along Kent's lovely North Downs in the southeast of England where I live. This week has made me realise that I've actually saved a lot of time not making hot drinks throughout the day. When you need to make water, all you do is go to the tap. However, when you need to make tea, coffee, chamomile, green tea, whatever the hot drink happens to be, you actually need to wait for the hot water to boil. Then you need to make the drink itself and then you have to do loads of other bits and pieces like wash up the cups afterwards. I've realised that I've actually saved a lot of time throughout this test, so that's a key benefit to be gained. Anyway, I'm going to finish this run and tomorrow is the last day of the test and then I will debrief you on what I've learned and what you might be able to gain from trying something similar. See you soon.
3, 2, 1. That is the end of a week of drinking only water. I've got to say, it's been an educational, testing, tough, and sometimes emotional experience. I've loved, I've laughed and cried, I've had my fill, my share of H2O. Anyway, I'm going to break this section down into the benefits and observations, the drawbacks and the challenges, and then I'm going to speak about what I'm actually going to apply in my daily life moving forward as a result of having completed this test. The first thing that drinking only water for an entire week has taught me to be more grateful for those small and little things that we have in our daily lives that we sometimes take for granted. In 2019, the World Health Organization published an article which said that even to this day, 1 in 3 people around the world still don't have access to clean drinking water. And when you think about it, the fact that we have access to clean drinking water at the turn of a tap in the developed world, it's actually incredible considering how crucial and essential water is for human life. So after this test, I'm going to start thinking of water as more of a privilege and a luxury rather than just a bog standard plain drink. The second thing I noticed was that my energy levels were stable throughout the course of the day. Rather than having those usual highs and lows associated with drinking caffeine and other caffeinated drinks, I was able to maintain a similar level of focus throughout the entire day, which meant that I could work consistently on a project whilst producing the same quality of results consistently and reliably. The third point, which is an observation, is that I drank a much lower volume of liquid throughout the day, which is probably due to the fact that water is by definition the most hydrating liquid you can come across. This resulted in spending less time making drinks in the kitchen and experiencing less thirst throughout the day, so I could focus on whatever it was I had to get done. The fourth point, which is a massive benefit, is that the quality and quantity of my sleep improved throughout the week, which is probably due to not drinking any caffeine. In his groundbreaking book, Why We Sleep, sleep scientist Matthew Walker explains the link between caffeine and wakefulness. In our brains, we have neurotransmitters called adenosine, which induce a state of sleepiness under normal circumstances. However, drinking caffeine inhibits the action of adenosine and makes us feel more awake for longer, resulting in insomnia and other sleep-related disorders and troubles. The fifth point, a benefit, is time savings. On a normal day, I spend 15 to 20 minutes making hot drinks waiting for the kettle to boil. However, throughout this week, the most I spent on any given day pouring water out of a jug was probably a minute in total, so time savings is a massive benefit. Next, we're going to talk about the negatives noticed throughout the week. As someone who runs every day with multiple events to train for, I'm always mindful about my performance, and I noticed throughout this week that my times were quite slower than usual, and it just took me a while to actually get into the flow of things in the run itself, so performance decline was something that I noticed. And this may be due to the absence of caffeine, which has been linked in various studies to improved athletic performance. The second drawback I noticed throughout the week was a lack of energy in high-stakes situations. Now, what do I mean by high-stakes situations? These are the situations where you need a lot of energy in a short amount of time to create a big impact and to do some good work. Examples might be job interviews, speaking in meetings, social situations, or even just focusing on a piece of studying for an upcoming exam. Throughout this week, I've had instances of all of those things that I've just mentioned, and I had to say that my performance was a little bit worse than what it normally would have been had I been drinking caffeine in the form of coffee or tea. Okay, they were the benefits and the drawbacks. Now time for the million-dollar question. What am I going to change in my life moving forward? Well, I think it's obvious to say the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down on my consumption of caffeinated drinks like tea or coffee, and I'm going to increase my consumption of good old H2O water. Over the years, I've neglected water in place of tea, coffee, fizzy drinks and energy drinks. But throughout this week, I've noticed that I've felt really good physically through drinking only water, so I think that water should become the primary go-to drink rather than something that is drunk on the odd occasion. The second change is that I'm going to stop drinking coffee after 12 PM in an effort to improve the quality of my sleep. In his book, Why We Sleep, Matthew Walker says that caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours, which means that 5 to 6 hours after consuming coffee, tea or anything else with caffeine in it, half of that substance is still circulating in your system. This means that if you drink tea or coffee in the late afternoon or the evening, you're probably going to have caffeine circulating in your system for when it's time to go to bed, which will result in sleep problems such as insomnia, which I have suffered for in the past, probably as a result of caffeine. Self-inflicted misery at its finest.
All around me are familiar faces.
The third big change moving forward is that I'm going to make caffeine consumption strategic rather than something that is just a habit. Before taking on this test, I would drink 6 cups of coffee and 4 cups of tea a day without having a clear reason in mind for doing so. However, drinking just water for an entire week has taught me that you don't need caffeine all the time to be performing highly. You can produce good quality work on a stable and consistent basis by drinking just water. It's in those high stakes situations where you need that extra energy boost where I think that it's appropriate to be drinking coffee. So for me, that's something that I'm going to start playing and experimenting with in my own daily routine. So it might be before I'm going to do an intense training session with my running, or it might be when I'm about to go into an important meeting at work, or maybe even just in a social situation where I want to make a good impression on people. And that is it. We are at the end of this test of drinking just water for an entire week. I hope you found this video interesting, and until next time, cheers.